my dear listener. Close your eyes for a while. Breathe in, slow, and let me take you back to a time when cobblestone lanes curled through valleys, and nights were lit by candlelight instead of glass and wire. To a place where the scent of baking bread and river water drifted together in the cool morning air. In the green cradle of a wide valley, hugged close by silver-backed mountains, there was a small stone cottage. It had a thatched roof, uneven in places from long winters, and a little garden just outside, where rosemary, thyme, and lavender grew in neat, humble rows. This was the home of Alaric, an old man whose shoulders were a little bent now, but whose hands still moved with the careful patience of a craftsman. His hair was white as midwinter frost, falling to his shoulders. A neatly trimmed beard framed his face, and in his hazel-gray eyes was the kind of quiet that only comes from years of watching the seasons turn without hurry. Beside him lived his daughter Elara. She was in her early 20s, though numbers did not capture her presence. Her skin was fair, often kissed by the sun in the summer months. Long, chestnut-brown hair spilled in waves down her back, often escaping the ribbon she tied it with. Her eyes were hazel deep, thoughtful, and full of that soft spark one notices in people who are kind without needing to be asked. Alaric was a weaver, as his father was before him. He and Elara made cloth from the wool of sheep grazed in the nearby meadows. Their loom sat near the cottage hearth, its wood polished smooth from decades of hands working it. The room often smelled faintly of lanolin, wood smoke, and the faint perfume of dried flowers hung in bunches overhead. Elara's work was delicate, yet strong, every thread placed with the care of someone who believed beauty should serve as well as please. In spring, they dyed fabrics, with colors coaxed from the valley itself, yellows from marigold, soft greens from nettle, blues from woad, and rich browns from walnut husks. One morning, as dew still clung to the grass, word spread through the valley. The king's household was traveling through the region. A feast would be held in the great hall of the castle, 2 leagues away. The townsfolk buzzed with the news. Merchants prepared their best goods, beeswax candles carved in spirals, wheels of hard cheese rubbed in ash, honey in glass jars, thick as amber. Alaric knew this was a chance. The royal court was always in need of fine cloth. For 3 days, he and Elara worked the loom without pause. What they brought forth was a single length of cloth, but it was enough. It was a blue as deep as river mist at dawn, edged with delicate silver embroidery. Elara's hands had traced each stitch, and when she laid it across the table, the threads caught the firelight like frost on morning grass. The castle stood on a low hill above the valley, its stone walls wearing the scars of old winters and older battles. As Alaric and Elara approached, the air grew busy, horses being led to the stables, men in mail leaning on spears, women in bright gowns sweeping through the gates. Inside, the great hall was alive with sound, laughter, boots on stone, the smell of roasting meat. Banners in red and gold hung from the beams. It was here that Elara saw him. He stood a head taller than most around him, dressed in a deep crimson tunic edged with gold embroidery. His dark brown hair fell in soft waves to his jawline, framing a face of noble lines, high cheekbones, a strong jaw, and deep green eyes that held both command and curiosity. This was Prince Alaric, the king's son. His gaze moved politely over the crowd until it stopped on her. There was a stillness in that moment, as if the air between them held its breath. He stepped toward their table. "You're weaving," he said, his voice low and warm. "Looks as though it belongs in the palace itself." Elara's lashes lowered. "It is only a cloth, my lord. The river gave its hue, and the flowers gave their silver. I only shaped them." A small smile curved his lips, not the polite smile she had seen him give others, but one that seemed real. "Then, you have shaped beauty itself," he replied. In the days that followed, the prince found excuses to pass near the village. He would ride along the riverbank, speaking with Alaric about weaving, about wool merchants, about the state of trade. But when Aldrich left the room to tend the fire or fetch tea, Alaric would turn to Elara, and the conversation would soften. They spoke of things that had no place in trade ledgers: the sound of rain on cobblestones, the scent of bread baking on winter mornings, the way the heart could sometimes feel too big for the body. Sometimes they sat together without speaking at all, just listening to the willow leaves rustle over the slow water. The world seemed smaller then, just the two of them, the river and the quiet. My dear listener, love in a medieval court was a delicate thread, easily woven, but just as easily snapped. And so, as Elara and Prince Alaric's quiet meetings deepened into something neither could name aloud, the walls of the castle began to listen. The days grew warmer. Willow branches leaned farther over the water, heavy with leaves. Alaric still came to the village, though now his visits were shorter, for the king's messengers often called him back to the palace. He began to bring her things, not jewels or gold, but little objects that felt personal. Once, a sprig of rosemary from the palace gardens, still smelling of sun-warmed earth. Another time, a small book of poetry in soft faded leather words copied by hand in a scribe's careful script. They read it together by the river. Sometimes, Alaric would stop mid-verse, watching her eyes as if the lines had been meant for her alone. But in the great hall of the castle, a man of different temperament was watching. King Edric was a man of 60 winters, though his bearing still carried the steel of his youth. His white and silver hair was cut short, his beard trimmed square to the jaw. He wore deep crimson robes edged with fur, and on his hand, the heavy gold signet of his line. His green eyes, a mirror of his son's, had little softness in them. He had ruled through famine, through border skirmishes, through the uneasy dance of alliances with other kingdoms, and in his mind, a son's marriage was not a matter of the heart, but a tool, sharpened for the stability of the realm. When word reached him that Alaric had been seen often in the company of a weaver's daughter, his thoughts turned not to romance, but to the danger of misplaced loyalty. It came during an evening meal in the private dining chamber. Alaric sat across from his father, the glow of beeswax candles dancing over the long table. "I hear," the king began, his voice steady but cool, "that you spend much time near the village by the river." Alaric met his gaze without flinching. "I speak with the people. I learn their needs." The king's brow lifted. "You speak with one, in particular." There was a pause, the space between them suddenly sharp as a drawn blade. Alaric set down his cup. "She is not like the court. She listens without trying to maneuver my words. She sees me, not my title." The king's jaw tightened. A prince cannot marry for sentiment. The daughter of the Duke of Norvale will bind us to the north. That is the path, and if my heart lies elsewhere, Alaric asked quietly, "Then you will teach it obedience," the king replied, his tone like closing iron gates. After that night, Alaric's visits became rarer. When he did appear, he was shadowed by 2 guards. The moments by the river grew short, like candle stubs burning low. Elara did not press him with questions. She saw the weight in his eyes, the way his shoulders carried some invisible chain. One evening, rain fell in slow, steady threads from a low sky. Alaric came to the cottage without a guard, his cloak heavy with water, his hair dripping at the ends. "My father has chosen a bride for me," he said without preamble, his voice tight. "The duke's daughter, for the strength of the kingdom," he says. Alara's hands stilled on the cloth she was folding. "And what do you wish?" she asked. He stepped close, his palms warm against her damp cheeks. "I wish only for you," but wishes, in a kingdom ruled by bloodlines, were fragile things. Aldrich had not been blind to what bloomed between them. He saw how Elara's face lit when she spoke of the prince, and he saw how quickly that light dimmed in the weeks of his absence. One morning, as mist curled over the river, Aldrich set down his shuttle and looked at her. "You've been quiet," he said softly. She tried to smile. "I am only tired." But Aldrich had been a father too long to mistake that tone. He thought of the years he had lived, how quickly joy could be lost if one did not defend it. That very afternoon, Aldrich put on his best dark tunic, simple but clean and belted with worn leather. His knees ached as he walked the long road to the castle, but he did not stop. The guards at the gate eyed him, but his request to speak with the king was so plain, so unafraid, that they led him into the great hall. The king sat on a high-backed chair, robed in crimson, a silver circlet at his brow. Aldrich bowed, not low as a courtier might, but steady as a man who knows his worth. "My lord," he began, "I speak not as a weaver today, but as a father." The king's eyes narrowed slightly. "Then speak, father. My daughter loves your son, and he loves her. I am old. My winters are many, my springs few, but theirs is just beginning. Will you break it before it blooms?" The king's gaze was cold, his voice measured. Love does not keep a kingdom whole. Alliances do. Aldrich did not raise his tone, but there was a quiet iron in his words. "A kingdom without love, my king, is but a prison with a crown." For a moment, the hall seemed to hold its breath. Then the king waved a hand, dismissing him. Aldrich turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. But the words, they lingered. Days passed. Neither Alaric nor the king came to the cottage. The loom clacked on the sound of work, filling the silences between Elara and her father. Some evenings Aldrich would catch her staring into the fire, her lips slightly parted, as if she were listening for something. A footstep outside, a knock on the door that never came. The villagers, too, had begun to whisper. Some said the king would send Alaric away to the northern duchy for good. Others claimed the prince had refused all talk of marriage, and the court was in quiet uproar. Then, one morning, as frost still clung to the edges of the grass, a rider appeared on the path. He wore the king's colors, crimson and gold, and in his gloved hand, a sealed parchment. Elara took it with both hands, her heart pounding. She broke the wax and read, "By order of His Majesty King Edric, of the House of Farendale, you are summoned to the castle at first light tomorrow." And there, my dear listener, is where the night deepens. The river flows on beneath the willows, the hearth sighs in the quiet cottage, and the space between heartbeats holds more than words. The rest will come with the dawn. My dear listener, some summonses are sharp as an arrow, meant to wound, but others are keys. And when Elara awoke the next morning, the frost silvering the thatch, she did not yet know what she held in her hands. She wore her best dress, the one of soft earthy brown, its sleeves edged in modest embroidery. Aldrich walked beside her, leaning slightly on a carved wooden staff. The road was damp from the night's frost, crunching underfoot as the sun turned the mist to threads of gold. When the castle gates came into view, Elara's breath caught. Banners of crimson and gold hung from the towers, stirring in the light wind. The stone walls rose vast and solemn, their age marked by ivy curling into the mortar. They were led inside by a steward in green livery. The great hall smelled of cedar and beeswax polish. Tall windows cast pale winter light across the rushes-strewn floor. And there, on the dais, sat King Edric. He looked much as Aldrich had last seen him, robed in crimson, the silver circlet gleaming against his white hair. But there was something different in his eyes. Not softness, exactly, but a weighing, a measuring. Beside him stood Prince Alaric, dressed in a deep forest green tunic edged with gold thread. His gaze was fixed wholly on Elara. "Daughter of Aldrich," the king said, his voice carrying in the vaulted chamber. "You have been spoken of in these halls more than you know." Elara bowed her head. I am honored, my lord. I had planned a different path for my son, he continued, one of alliance, of strategy. But I have ruled long enough to know that a heart denied will often find ways to defy its king. He glanced at Alaric, and then at Aldrich, who stood silent but unbowed. Perhaps a kingdom may be stronger if love and loyalty are bound together. The words seemed to hang in the air, heavy with meaning. The king turned to Alaric. If this is your will, it shall be done. Alaric's voice was firm. It is my will. In the days that followed, the castle stirred with quiet, purposeful work. The chapel was swept and polished. Beeswax candles were lined along the stone window ledges. Garlands of rosemary, ivy, and dried lavender were woven by the women of the court, filling the air with a green resinous perfume. Elara was given a chamber overlooking the inner courtyard. Her wedding gown she made with her own hands, pale as moonlight, sewn from silk gifted by the queen's own stores. Silver thread, fine as hair, ran through the hem and cuffs, catching light with each movement. One evening, as the last light faded to blue through her window, Alaric came to see her. I thought I would be relieved, he admitted softly, to have my father's consent. But now, I feel as though the world has grown wider, and I must learn how to walk in it again. Elara smiled faintly. Perhaps we will learn together. He reached for her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. Tomorrow, he said, we begin the first page of our own story. The day dawned, cold and bright. Frost rimmed the edges of the courtyard stones. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke from the village beyond. Inside, the chapel glowed with candlelight. The pews were draped with garlands. The altar was set with white cloth, the gold of the chalice catching the flicker of the flames. Elara's hair was braided with small silver beads, the long chestnut strands falling like soft rivers down her back. Aldrich kissed her brow before the ceremony, his eyes bright with tears he did not try to hide. The guests fell silent as the chapel doors opened. Elara stepped forward, the sound of her gown whispering against the stone. Alaric stood at the altar, dressed in white and gold, the colors of the royal house, and when he saw her, his smile was not the practiced smile of a prince, but the open, unguarded joy of a man who sees his heart walking toward him. The priest's voice was low and steady, the vows spoken clearly in the cool air. When they joined hands, the candlelight caught on the silver threads of her gown, making them glow like frost under the sun. And so, the priest intoned, before the eyes of God and the court, be joined in heart and in vow. Their lips met, a kiss, both gentle and certain. The great hall was transformed for the wedding feast. Long tables groaned under roasted venison, glazed with honey, bowls of sugared almonds, wheels of cheese the size of shields. Flagons of spiced wine were poured freely. The air was warm with the mingled scents of bread, meat, and herbs. Minstrels played soft melodies on lutes and harps. Alaric led Elara to the floor for the first dance, a slow turning beneath the high beams, the watching crowd fading into nothing. Later, when laughter and music swelled around him, Aldrich slipped quietly out into the courtyard. The moon hung low over the battlements, silvering the frost. From within came the muffled sounds of joy, his daughter's laughter, the clink of goblets. He leaned on his staff, looking up at the cold stars. For years, he had woven threads into cloth, and now, somehow, he had helped weave two lives together. He closed his eyes, the night air cool on his face, and thought, this is enough. Inside, the candles burned low, their wax pooling at the bases. The feast slowed, guests drifting away in twos and threes. Alaric and Elara stood together near the fire, speaking in low tones. From the door, Aldrich watched them, the prince's head bent to hers, her hand resting lightly against his arm, and felt a peace settle into his bones. And when he finally left the hall, he carried with him not just the sight of their happiness, but the sound of it like a river, steady and certain, running on through the years to come. And so, dear listener, the old man saw the valley's spring bloom once more, in his daughter's smile, and in the kindness of a prince who had chosen love. The willows still bent over the river, the loom still sang in the cottage, and in the hush between the tolling of the bell and the sigh of the wind, the story of Elara and Alaric lived on, a thread unbroken,